The film begins with the scene of a woman driving in the dark while singing, her young son seated in the back. It's Christmas Eve, and snow is falling. The boy, named Henry, is about 5 years old and compliments his mother's singing, expressing their deep affection for one another. Suddenly, the car in front of them loses control, causing Henry and his mother's car to spin wildly. In the midst of this, Henry panics and begins to vanish. His mother, in disbelief, watches as he disappears while a truck looms, about to crash into them. In the next moment, Henry, now naked, finds himself in his home, watching a scene of his younger self with his parents, who are reading together on the couch. Terrified and confused, Henry disappears again and reappears at the site of the car accident, still naked and standing by the roadside. An older man then appears, covers him with a blanket, and explains that he is Henry from the future. He reveals that they are both time travelers, and his mother died in the accident. Though young Henry cannot yet understand, he will someday. The older Henry then vanishes. The older Henry reappears, naked, in the library where he works. He quickly dresses at the library. A woman named Claire Abshire asks for a book, and the librarian suggests Mr. DeTamble might help. Claire is shocked when she sees Henry and exclaims, "It's you." Though Henry has no memory of her, they agree to meet at a local restaurant. During their meal, Claire reveals that she has known Henry her entire life. He has visited her since she was a little girl, though he has never been this young before Henry is 28. Henry explains that certain significant events pull him back repeatedly, like gravity. Claire responds, "I was a big event." Later, at Henry's apartment, Claire passionately kisses him, and as they embrace, Henry asks how they first met. This triggers a flashback to a young Claire, age 6, meeting an older Henry in the woods. Naked and needing a blanket, he introduces himself as a time traveler and tells her they know each other in the future. She is skeptical until he suddenly disappears, leaving her astonished. From then on, Claire regularly leaves clothes for Henry in the woods. The narrative then shifts back to the present, where Henry and Claire's relationship develops. Although Claire loves Henry, she struggles with the differences between the young, flawed Henry she now knows and the more composed, older version she grew up with. Still, their love endures. In the meantime, Claire introduces Henry with her friend Gomez. One day, Gomez saw Henry wearing ladies' clothes fighting some goons. Then Henry tells Gomez about his time travel. When Gomez witnesses Henry's time travel, he urges Claire to leave him, but she cannot because, as she explains, she has loved Henry her entire life. In a poignant moment, Henry travels back to a time before his mother's death, and meets her on the subway. They share a brief conversation, during which he tells her how much her son loves her, leaving her with a profound sense of connection before he departs. Henry proposes to Claire using his mother's engagement ring. He then meets her family, learning that her father is an avid hunter. At their wedding, Gomez is the best man. But just before the ceremony, Henry disappears. An older version of Henry arrives in his place. Much to Claire's surprise, they both laugh it off, and the ceremony proceeds. As they celebrate their marriage, Henry abruptly disappears again, this time reappearing in the meadow with a young Claire. She asks if he is married, and though Henry admits he is, he refrains from revealing that his wife is actually her. When he returns to the present and tells Claire about the encounter, they both laugh about young Claire being jealous of her future self. At the reception, the present day, Henry reappears in time for their first dance. He asks Claire if she is disappointed to be married to him instead of his older self, but Claire reassures him that she is married to both versions. The couple moves into an apartment in Chicago and tries to settle into married life, but Henry's unpredictable time traveling often leaves Claire alone for days or weeks. The strain on their relationship leads to arguments, especially after Henry misses Christmas and New Year's Day. Claire grows increasingly frustrated by his frequent absences and the cramped apartment, which hinders her work as an artist. One night, they host a dinner with Gomez and a pregnant Charis. During the meal, a future version of Henry, bleeding and gasping, suddenly appears on the living room floor before disappearing again, leaving everyone shocked. Claire is troubled, fearing that Henry might die soon, as she has never seen an older version of him beyond his 40s. However, she finds hope in the possibility that he might have found a cure for his time traveling. Shortly after, she reveals that she is pregnant. Henry consults a geneticist, Dr. Kendrick, who discovers that his time traveling is caused by a chromosomal mutation, which is likely hereditary. Claire has already had 3 miscarriages because the fetuses traveled out of the womb. The repeated loss strains their relationship, as Claire desperately wants to be a mother, while Henry fears bringing a child into his unpredictable world. Without telling Claire, Henry has a vasectomy, but the emotional toll of his decision causes him to time travel. He ends up in the meadow with an 18-year-old Claire, who can tell something is wrong. When Henry refuses to explain, she slaps him, leading to an intense and emotional exchange. He then kisses her gently before disappearing back to the present, where he eventually confesses to Claire about the vasectomy. She is devastated, both by his decision and by his encounter with her younger self. That night, a young Henry calls Claire, needing help after time traveling to a parking garage in Chicago. She picks him up, and during their conversation, they share a moment of intimacy. Later, Claire tells the present-day Henry about the incident, explaining that it wasn't cheating because it was still him. Shortly after, Claire discovers she is pregnant again. While trying to choose a name for their daughter, Henry time travels and meets a 10-year-old girl who calls him Natty. The girl, Alba, explains that she also has the ability to time travel, but can control. She also reveals that Henry died when she was 5 years old. Henry is deeply affected by this news, but only tells Claire that their daughter is beautiful and smart, and they decide to name her Alba. The film then shows Alba's birth and a montage of the next 5 years. On the day of Alba's 5th birthday, Henry is visibly troubled. As he prepares for the party, a future version of Alba visits her younger self and tells her that their father will die soon. Upset, Alba confides in Claire, who is left uncertain and worried. Henry eventually learns that he will die on the upcoming New Year's Eve. As the day arrives, he and Claire host a party, unaware of Henry's fate. Claire notices his contemplative mood as he says his goodbyes to friends. He then takes Claire outside to say his final farewell. They share a heartfelt moment, with Claire expressing that she wouldn't trade any part of their life together. As they kiss, midnight strikes, fireworks go off, and Henry disappears. Henry reappears in the snowy woods near the meadow just before dawn. As he observes a deer, a gunshot rings out, and Henry is shot. He disappears in pain, leaving only blood in the snow, which Claire's father and brother later mistake for a wounded deer. Back at the New Year's Eve party, Henry returns, naked and dying from the gunshot wound. Claire rushes to his side, and they exchange final words of love before Henry dies. The story concludes with Claire, now a widow, lying in bed with their daughter, grieving Henry's death. Later, in the meadow, a 9-year-old Alba plays with Gomez and cherishes children when Henry suddenly appears from the woods. Alba is thrilled to see him, as it has been 4 years since his death. As they talk, Gomez's children run to fetch Claire. When she sees Henry, they embrace, and Claire tearfully expresses her love, knowing this may be the last time she sees him. Henry reassures her that he didn't want her to spend her life waiting for him, and they share a final, bittersweet moment together.